Welcome in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for NFL Week 9. The trade deadline is in the books. Bit of a snooze, but that's okay. We also got the quarterback carousel spinning at an all-time rate this morning, so a lot to get to here. Let's start the show. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for NFL Week 9. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. We're going to break down every single game on this week's slate. If you're watching us live, we're coming to you a day early, so some travel considerations and concessions had to be made. Our good friend Nick Whalen over here at RotoWire is getting married this weekend. I gotta travel for that, so we moved some things around. Mario graciously moving things to Wednesday, so we're coming at you a day early, but we're still rocking. We're still feeling good. We're still ready for this slate. But Mario, before we get rolling here, any reactions to the trade deadline whatsoever? Because it was kind of as per usual with the NFL. Basically, that there are pseudo beat writers that like have some semblance of a following that will say things along the lines of, hearing the Ravens are very interested in Josh Jacobs, or the Chiefs are really making inroads on Darnell Mooney. And then that stuff never comes to fruition. If you've been following the NFL for longer than last year, when obviously Christian McCaffrey got moved, this is pretty par for the course as far as NFL trade deadline day is concerned now.
I think nowadays there's more trades at the deadline than there used to be. Like, I feel like as recently as 5 years ago or something, you'd only see literally 2 trades, whereas now it's not quite, baseball, but there's a little bit more going on nowadays. Nothing cataclysmic for this one, I guess, but to mix the subjects a little bit, I feel like it's really, really crazy that the Raiders at that particular time fired Josh McDaniels. Not because it's bad to fire McDaniels. I would have done it. I wouldn't have hired him, etc. But to do that and then not trade Devontae Adams and really anybody that you can trade for anything at all, that makes no sense. And I can understand from the angle of if they just don't really understand their position and they're not understanding, they don't have any leverage about it and going, we're not going to trade Adams for a 4th round pick and eat, another $25 million on his contract. Like, well, then you're just going to pay him his whole contract or like cut him in the offseason and get nothing and still have the cap penalty. So which sounds better to you? And I guess maybe also they had a lot of things happening at once. So maybe that's why Mark Davis never thought about these things. But if you're benching Garoppolo and if you're firing McDaniels, why not trade Adams for literally a 7th round pick if that's all you can get? If that's all you can get, it's more than what you'll get when you have to cut. They're not even going to get like a comp pick because his contract, and it's like if they're gonna have to eat money at some point, or just keep him the whole time and he'll be pouting the whole time, rightfully so. So total mess with the Raiders. And now it's just going to kind of in a way get worse because none of those guys who wanted to get out are out of there. And total nightmare. The Montez Sweat one, I think, was a pretty big move. Washington also completely tanking, trading away Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat to the Bears is funny, of course, because it can go one of 2 ways. It can either be the next Chase Claypool trade, a little bit better in that they at least get the rental out of him. With Claypool, they paid for a rental and didn't even get the rental, and of course didn't extend him. But if they extend Montez Sweat, then that means Ryan Poles is basically doing the same thing that he did last year to so much applause from a certain wing of analytics ideology about how, trading Roquan Smith for a 2nd round pick, that's sharp, that's smart, bad to overpay, good to get draft pick instead. Now he's paying a 2nd round pick here for the chance, the mere opportunity, not a guarantee, and at a much higher cost than Roquan Smith, by the way, whatever cost, sign Montez Sweat to an extension. And it's interesting. It seems like Poles is already flailing. He's already desperate. He feels the heat already because he's already doing a thing that last year he did the opposite of. Or sorry, he was on the other end of the thing last year, and he was pitching it as like, oh, this is smart to do. So either that wasn't smart, or this is just now the right way to go, and it's it's more likely I think that Poles just has no idea what he's doing. It's just kind of mashing buttons.
Yep. Such is the life of the Chicago Bears generally. Don't they have what, 2 Super Bowl appearances in their entire franchise history?
God, I don't know. Maybe just the one. I don't know.
I
have no sense of the 80. I don't know. Is it like 82 and 84 also big one? Or
85 they made it and won. 2006 they lost to Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. For a franchise that gets talked about as much as it does, they don't really do anything. They really are kind of Cubsian.
That's probably like an 8. That's probably like 8 out of 32 teams though. It's like the Lions have never won anything, right?
They get all the headlines. They get all the oxygen. And I don't understand it.
I think, as far as I can remember, the only teams that have ever won a Super Bowl are the Patriots, Steelers, Cowboys. The Packers had one, and I guess the Broncos. The
Ravens won
Chiefs,
too.
The Chiefs, yeah. Oh, and the Ravens, yeah. So like 7 teams have ever won a Super Bowl.
Yep. Everyone else, thanks for coming out. Let's go ahead. Let's get things rolling. Let's start things out Thursday night. And this is a fortuitous place for us to start because I thought probably the biggest storyline coming out of last weekend on an individual basis was Will Levis's crazy debut. And now he gets to prove whether it was a fluke or not this week on a short week, going to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers. The Steelers obviously looked rather out of sorts last weekend and certainly didn't help that Kenny Pickett suffered that injury, though he's expected to be good to go for Thursday. But what did you think of that Levis performance? I mean, as far as your expectations and your just kind of analysis of Will Levis coming in versus what we saw on Sunday.
It's kind of good that we were just talking about the few times that the Bears have made it to the Super Bowl, because the last time they did, their quarterback was Rex Grossman. And Rex Grossman, I can't remember what else he would do. I guess it was like interceptions, but he was mostly known for just having like a 3 outcome kind of style of play where it's like interception or other bad thing, or it's going deep to Bernard Berrien and it's going to land, and like he would just kind of chuck it deep and hope it landed, and sometimes it would. It wore out over the longer that he had to play, as he was eventually benched. Terrible quarterback overall, despite making that Super Bowl. And those Will Levis bombs to Hopkins looked a lot like that. Just they were smart plays to make. Like it's a good, it's reflecting good on Levis that he had the sense to take those opportunities when they were there. But it wasn't so much that he was placing those passes deliberately and in response to an ambiguous coverage or anything. Like for some reason, I mean, you saw it on that one, they completely cut Hopkins loose on that one play, just total coverage breakdown. And even in the ones that were somewhat contested, it was an easy call because it's like, I got this clean pocket. Hopkins is 40 yards downfield. I should just throw it at him, especially because it's DeAndre Hopkins. If it was any other player, almost it'd maybe be less of a good idea, but it was totally correct calculation. Like if I just throw this at Hopkins, he's probably going to come down with it. And even if he doesn't, pass interference or something, why not throw it? So it was good to see Levis understand kind of like the leverage of the game. He knew, he correctly understood that he was in a position to take the kind of risks that he did, and they paid off really well. The problem is it's basically always going to get more difficult than it was in that game, especially the stuff with cutting loose Hopkins of all players they were on like these zone coverages and no one thinks to follow Hopkins. Like you must be covering like 2 people right now, having 8 guys in coverage. How did you even do this? So that was crazy to watch. And Hopkins is great. Levis made really good plays, but it's always just going to be tougher than that. This game, short week, is difficult for me to figure out because Fitzpatrick, I assume, is not going to play for the Steelers, and they get really bad really fast when any of Fitzpatrick or Watt, I guess Hayward to a lesser extent, even though they've been without him. Fitzpatrick and Watt in particular, though, it's like once one of them is out, a whole unit falls apart on that defense because they're kind of doing, especially in the secondary, they're doing money ball stuff at corner. They have trash corner personnel. They have Patrick Peterson playing in the slot at 33 or whatever. That's crazy. And when you don't have Fitzpatrick back there, being just kind of a do everything, fixer, everybody starts looking really bad. So this could be another easy matchup. I just don't know how to balance it against, the short week consideration can't be easy, or I assume is not easy on a rookie quarterback. So I'm expecting it to get more difficult just because, and the short week makes it more difficult potentially yet. But this is the weakest that the Steelers could possibly be as a pass defense in something like, I don't know, like 8 years or something.
Yes, that certainly is a problem. Cam Hayward is designated to return. I think he should be potentially available for that game. So that certainly helps up front, especially against that Titans offensive line that
would mean a lot.
bad.
Yeah, because Hayward's really good.
Yeah, 100%. And his brother is on the fantasy radar in some deeper, sicko 2 tight end circles. But beyond that, I'm just going to say it, Mario. It feels rude to just comp Will Levis's amazing debut and just say Rex Grossman. I want to believe. I don't know. I want to believe.
People were at the time saying like, "Hey, Rex Grossman's good. Deal with it." It's like, but bad quarterbacks do have good games. It does happen. They even have good seasons sometimes. But Levis, I mean, to be serious, he did a good job, and it was an encouraging game for him, definitely.
I mean, it was. I thought the Falcons were a lock going into that game. I thought that Levis was going to make all these mistakes. I didn't think that the offense really had the designs in place to get the downfield stuff. I mean, didn't he like double the Titans passing touchdown total on the season in one game? I mean, like it was. Obviously, it's the lowest of bars to clear, but
I'll say this. I mean, I'm not taking it for a given that Tannehill makes those same throws. I mean, Tannehill is bad, and I thought even when he was when he was a good something better than bad quarterback, he was still limited. He was kind of like a 3-point specialist quarterback. He wasn't a quarterback who could throw it 40 times and keep it all together. It's like he needs his wide open shots, and if you need him to make more than like 4 in a game, he starts to just get scattershot. And I don't know if he had it in him to have the guts to make some of those throws. I think he makes like 2 of them, especially the one where Hopkins was completely uncovered. But yeah, Levis. Again, the most encouraging thing for me was he showed the understanding of when the defense is in a position to be subject to bad luck, and he knows when he can take a risk with the penalty of being wrong being minimized. He understood leverage basically, and if he keeps that in mind and keeps poise and doesn't play with hesitation, that's a lot toward making a decent quarterback right there.
I mean, there's obviously a lot of flaws to Will Levis's game, but I think confidence is not something that he's lacking. I think and he has the requisite arm strength to make a lot of the throws that he envisions making. So I'm open to him. I was so over the Titans by the time that Ryan Tannehill had gotten injured in that London game, to where it's like, give me anything. And Levis gave them a pulse. Maybe it also is a compounding factor that they're wearing like the sickest jerseys in the NFL on a week where Seattle also busted out there.
I feel like they shouldn't be able to have those. That's weird.
I agree. I fully
that'd
agree.
Be like what would that? That'd be like the Ravens doing Browns jerseys.
Well, the Indianapolis does it. They just stole all of Baltimore's history, but that's what 40-year-old sour grapes, but that just means they're fermenting even stronger. But yes, fully agree on the style critique there, and the Titans should not be allowed to do that. It should be Houston. Beyond that, on the Pittsburgh side of things for fantasy here, anything to keep an eye on here going up against this Titans defense?
Well, I never would have thought this was possible, but apparently Mitch Trubisky really is just a lot worse than Kenny Pickett. So if Pickett is limited, they lose something. If they're forced to go back to Trubisky, they lose something. But I don't know, these receivers are really good, and if I mean with Trubisky maybe they're not, but with almost anybody else, including Mason Rudolph, probably they'd be better. better off than with Mitch Trubisky. But Pickens and Johnson to a lesser extent, I think. But Pickens can really beat on a corner like Christian Fulton, who just doesn't really have a. He kind of goes where he's assigned to go and understands like the basics of corner play, but can't really can't make a vertical push, can't really knock down a pass all that well. And I think Pickens, you see Pickens making these plays that aren't just contested catches anymore, and I think that's because as much as people might say like he only does that though, those plays, these other plays are just like the other guys screwing up. They're largely probably screwing up because they're so afraid of getting dunked on that they're approaching him fundamentally differently than they do another receiver. They're not taking the same liberties against a guy like him now because they know that they can lose. He can get behind them and above them if they take the wrong risk. So he's earning the cushion, even if he's kind of, making these plays where it looks like he's not doing anything. He keeps getting it done. And I don't think that's really going to stop if the quarterback plays well, including in this setting. And Deontay Johnson's doing good too, and the attention, the greater target share that Pickens is drawing now will provide relief and cover to Deontay Johnson and improve his efficiency, which had been unacceptably low because he was so overused. And Pickens is going to make that better too. So I think Johnson will get better in general, even if the matchup's not ideal in this case, but as long as those two are getting like 20 targets combined, I think that offense could move the ball pretty, I don't know, maybe not a lot of points or something. Maybe there's turnovers screwing up the drives, preventing them from getting points. But I feel like there should be yardage with those two.
I think so too. Perhaps it was the confirmation bias gods doing this to me, but I felt like the only times I saw Deontay Johnson on Sunday was him like dropping a pass that would have been like a huge gain. But I think your general point, like he's not going to drop all of those. So
right. He's got bad numbers with Pittsburgh. Deontay Johnson does. His numbers are just crap in Pittsburgh, but he's not a bad player. It was just they were giving him like 1.5 times too much target volume. And I think it's as simple as like Pickens takes that, whatever the excess is, and Johnson, maybe he still drops a lot of passes, but it's like he gets a little more room to make his catches now, things like that.
Yes, and tying this off, I think you won back some of our listenership by admitting that Pickett is indeed the better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky, and an important.
He's in the top 45. He's in
there. He is. Yeah. Bango. Let's go ahead and move on to the Sunday slate. But before then, we got a message from our friends over at Circa. Get ready for the ultimate big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. Watch the big game poolside at Stadium Swim's big game viewing party. Massive screen, booming sound, and a view of the pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun with day beds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Or touchdown at the world's largest sportsbook, Circa Sports, for the Big Game Bash. 3 stories of football glory featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bar, stadium-style food, and more. The food is quite good. I can attest to that. That little frozen drink, you're doing good. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences only on February 11th, although Stadium Swim open 365. The big game parties only at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. We also got a message from our friends over at Blue Wire. And Guten Tag, Mario. We've got the Chiefs and the Dolphins playing in Frankfurt. Isn't that exciting?
It's great, John. What time is this one? Is this
it's probably really early, too early. Probably 9:30 a.m.
That's not so bad, I guess, but I don't like it. It shouldn't be there.
No.
Be here. But
especially like this game, like it's this weird pulling in two directions where it's like this is one of the most important games in the AFC this entire regular season. But you also, if you're going to put games across the pond, London's just used to the bad games, but like Germany, maybe they want to like set a slightly different precedent. Like I think it was like Seahawks Patriots last year, which wasn't great, but not some of the garbage that we've seen in the London games. This one, I mean, this is a huge game taking place under funky circumstances, to say the least. But let's see here. We've got the Chiefs checking in as 2.5-point favorites. That's about what you'd expect for that one. Over-under sitting at 50.5. So these teams coming off of two very different weeks. Miami not really pushed to the brink too much, but by New England. Although I did have some hope for the New England cover until fairly late in that game. A lot of points, 9.5. But the Chiefs kind of laid a stinker. And I believe they lost to the Broncos for the first time since 2015.
Yeah, that was probably a looking ahead kind of thing. Not to excuse losing to the Broncos. That's always embarrassing. No matter what, even if they win the Super Bowl, it'll be like asterisk. They lost to the Broncos though. So it's a pretty brutal one. And it's particularly given, like, I think the downward trend of the Chiefs offense since 2 years ago and even last year, this year, they at once have kind of gotten a little closer to some answers at receiver, but they haven't put them in motion. Like they know they got to get more Rashee Rice. They got to get fewer snaps for Sky Moore outside. Kadarius Toney need not play at all. They start cut him, scratch him, doesn't matter. He's not going to do anything for you. They've got these issues at receiver that are kind of bad enough that you'd say, they better get that in order, or at the very least, they're not going to be as good as they were, in previous Super Bowl seasons. Maybe they still win a Super Bowl somehow, but it's going to be one of those things that the defense needs to step up. The run game needs to get a lot better. And short of that, they not only are not really a Super Bowl contender, but they can kind of just lose games that they weren't supposed to. Like I would actually call, the Lions game certainly one of these. That was a little bit weird because the Brett Veach genius GM thought, like, let's just play without Chris Jones, and they of course didn't have Travis Kelce for that one either. I don't think that the Lions win that game if either of those guys are in the game, especially both of them. So it's already been costly at a high cost at this point. One divisional loss to a team as low as the Broncos. That's just embarrassing. So with that said, all those things make it that much more likely that they're laser focused in this one. I don't know how to factor in the travel for either team. I tend to think of it, I guess, as like an equal effect, if anything, because I don't understand why one team would be at an advantage anyway. So maybe that makes the scoring overall lower, but I don't know. I feel like both teams might be able to run on the other, but I feel like the Chiefs should definitely be able to run on the Dolphins. And I think the Chiefs, if they really needed to, could shut down the run better than the Dolphins could if they really needed to. And I mentioned that because I imagine the Chiefs defense is going to kind of encourage the Dolphins to run. I think Steve Spagnuolo, in a situation like this, like he knows he can't cover Tyreek Hill, so he's not gonna foolishly just let Tyreek Hill get a crack at Joshua Williams or Jalen Watson or whatever. It's gonna be more like a lot of zone coverages, and like a guy like Drew Tranquil is probably gonna play a lot, trying to do kind of, I don't know what you do against the Dolphins exactly. Like you need like dual robbers in the middle of the field to kind of cut both in breaking sides for Hill and Waddle, something like that. And they're gonna, I think, try to just spam the depth that Waddle and Hill tend to get their targets, the bulk of their on schedule targets, and encourage the Dolphins to run. So I can imagine Mostert having a pretty good game here. I just think that there's a chance that it's at the the Chiefs, from the Chiefs side, an sensible trade-off of more run production for fewer big plays in the passing game. Whereas I don't think there's any schematic adjustment that the Dolphins can do that for a full game covers them from what the Chiefs offense presents. Even with the Chiefs, having inferior or substandard anyway wide receiver personnel, that's a problem for the Chiefs. But against the Dolphins, I don't know if it's a problem. Like the Dolphins corners are pretty bad. Their run defense is really bad. If it weren't for Vic Fangio doing little tricks, smoke and mirrors, that defense is probably one of the 3 worst in the NFL. So I think that the Chiefs should be okay, even though it's very much dangerous setting.
Even with Jalen Ramsey back, you feel that way?
Yeah, with Ramsey back, they're not one of the 8 worst defenses, I guess, but they're still pretty bad. I mean, also we don't know how healthy he is, so he's one really really good corner if he's healthy, of course. It's just that Kyler Kohu had been called their top corner, and they're like, hey, he's pretty good, and I think he's like I don't know, probably like a top 80 corner or something like that. It was one of those things where he's only not getting beat more because the other corners are so easy to beat that no one's even bothering. It was like the Nnamdi Asomugha thing. He was a good corner, to be clear, but there was a time where people are like, oh my God, he's better than Revis because he was just all the other corners were really bad on the Raiders. But anyway, Ramsey helps a lot, definitely. It's just the run defense is still trash, and there's nothing they can do about that. Meanwhile, Ramsey, I don't think does anything about Kelsey. And if you can't Kelsey right now, the Chiefs kind of have that problem where similar to with the Bills and Diggs, where it's like if Diggs doesn't get to 120, the Bills have a big problem, and it's with Kelsey with the Chiefs. It's like if you keep Kelsey under 100 yards, the Chiefs have a problem. But the Dolphins don't have the personnel to dictate any of that. So I don't know. I think Kelsey pretty much kills them.
Yeah, that definitely checks out. As you're kind of breaking down that Dolphins defense, it's like, where's the safety help? Where's the linebacker help?
They might have good safeties. The Holland's good at least, and I saw Brandon Jones is back from injury, but I don't know if you can cover for those corners, especially because their pass rush is not very good either. It's like whenever they have success in coverage, it's just because Fangio pretty much surprised the quarterback with the coverage they showed after the snap.
Got it. And then, looking forward when it comes to the Chiefs, is there any signs of any life anywhere in this receiving core? I mean, it seems like Rashee Rice is starting to come on, but they do also still feel like really, really kind of over-reliant on Kelsey.
Yeah, the Chiefs, this is nothing new for Andy Reid, but they're making things harder on themselves by mismanaging the receiver personnel. And in this case, I don't know what he's waiting for Rashee Rice to show, or I don't know how bad he needs to see Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney fail. But Rashee Rice needs to play every snap that he can handle. Every single one that he has enough breath to play, he has to be out there. And short of that, it's just as simple as a little bit like the Eagles when they play Kenneth Gainwell. It's like you are very simply making a decision to push a button and make your own yardage count go down every time you do that. Every time the Chiefs take Rashee Rice off the field to put on anybody else, they're pushing a button and making their yardage number go down. And Andy Reid is convinced that something else is true. In the meantime, he's you saw him say like a week or two ago, like, "Oh, Rashee Rice is getting better every week." Like, no, you're just giving him a little bit more playing time every week, and the same player that he was the whole time is given more chance to show. And you're going, "Oh, there's more of him now." It's like you're pushing a button that makes it happen. You don't even know it. It's crazy. Just put Rashee Rice on the field, and that I actually think will cure most of it. The rest of it, though, is they need to, in my opinion, they need to stress more of the field. And I think you do this by having a 3-receiver base of Mecole Hardman outside, Marquez Valdes-Scantling on the other side, and Rashee Rice in the slot. They want to keep doing these things where they keep throwing bones to Justin Watson and Sky Moore, and they want to make Brett Veach look good, so they keep trying to pretend Kadarius Toney can play football, but he can't. So they just keep wasting all these reps. They keep wearing away at a margin of error that they can't afford to, and pushing their luck to the point of losing to teams like the Broncos. So it's maybe with all that said, losing to a team like the Broncos is what gets them to start being serious and start shedding so much emphasis on like, oh, what I think about glancing at these receivers in practice, how I think this guy's leaning into his cuts in practice and making, snap allocation decisions based on that. Like, no, give the snaps to the guys who make yardage happen. That's all you have to do. And when you start losing to teams like the Broncos, I think it has a way of kind of clarifying those things, even if it's just in the way of like, we're forcing ourselves to do something different because of how badly the last thing failed. Eventually they have to reach this conclusion. They feed Rice and get speed on the field to buy cover underneath for Rice and Kelsey.
I like it. The speed is there, like on that roster. They just need to get it on the field. I think we're going to see more of Mecole as the season unfolds, as he's kind of works his way back into form within that offense. But I thought that was a shrewd move by them. Not only was it a low cost acquisition, but also something that helps a unit that desperately kind of needs it. I think we're pretty much done with Sky Moore for this year. But I mean, if you're going into next year, assuming he's still on the Chiefs, I mean, do you have any interest in where's his dynasty value right now?
He has to play in the slot, and for some reason, the Chiefs are doing this thing where they say, "Oh, Rashee Rice has to play in the slot." Rashee Rice does not have to play in the slot. Rashee Rice can line up anywhere. Sky Moore is the one who needs to be in the slot. So the way I see it, if they start giving Rashee Rice more snaps outside, if they make Rashee Rice a 3-down player by getting him the snaps outside, thus clearing room for more in the slot, I think that can work for him. But yeah, this stuff that they're doing this thing right now where they line up more outside and then they limit Rice to the slot, and it's sooner correct to have it the opposite way around. And I don't know, it's once an easy solution in my opinion, but that it's so obvious and they're so for whatever reason, avoiding the realization, it's not encouraging to me. Like, it seems to me like the kind of thing that eventually Brett Veach will sour on more, if only to kind of distance himself from the pick.
Yeah, it's not looking great so far. I agree with you where maybe they're not using him in the most optimal way, but he's not really pulling his own weight when he does get the opportunities. Before we get on to our next game, I try to answer the questions in the chat, but sometimes I gotta ask the real expert. So Mario, here we go. Would you trade Aaron Jones for Ramondre Stevenson?
Oh God. I don't know, man. I like both players. I hate the situation for both players. I guess I'd probably rather have Stevenson. What I'm paranoid about here is Aaron Jones getting fully healthy and becoming the 5.5 yards a carry guy again. But that version of Jones also coincided with Rodgers being there. So with the no Rodgers there, of course, there's not going to be 16 touchdown Aaron Jones, even if he does get healthy or whatever. It would be like he averages 5 yards a carry and gets you maybe like 3 touchdowns because the Packers, who knows how many they even score the remainder of the year. I guess I'd prefer Stevenson.
Okay. All right. Good to know. I have a decent amount of Ramondre, not a ton of Aaron Jones in best ball, but I'm in a couple key ones, and I need him to pick it up. But that's besides.
Yeah. I don't think it's his fault, but all the more reason why it's kind of concerning.
Yeah, it is, and with his injury history, who's to say that he finishes the year healthy anyway. Let's get on over to the afternoon on Sunday. Speaking of the quarterback carousel that I alluded to at the beginning of the show, we're at the epicenter of it. Right here in Atlanta, we've got the Falcons, who are moving to Taylor Heineke for this week. We'll see if that's a permanent fixture going forward. So no Desmond Ridder, at least as the starter this time around. And then the Vikings, obviously having lost Kirk Cousins, that was brutal. They make the trade for Josh Dobbs. Does not look like he's going to be ready to start, although he could be available. So we're going to be riding with one Jaron Hall out of BYU as the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. And as a result, the Falcons are 4.5-point favorites over at BetMGM. Your thoughts on this game?
It's all very weird to me. I'm confused by both teams' recent actions. I think Heineke is probably better than Ridder. Excuse me, but I don't understand making the move now, especially given what Arthur Smith just said before last week. So did you not mean what you said, Arthur? Because if you didn't, that would make today, this new change make some sense. But it seems like you must have been saying something you just didn't mean before. Which when we're trying to do this, we're constantly trying to figure out what's Arthur thinking, and it's like he's just gonna kind of. It seems almost nihilistic at this point. The things that he does, it seems like it's just for nihilistic reasons and not really much else. So whatever, make the change. Don't. Who cares? Arthur doesn't seem to, but I think the Dobbs thing with the Vikings is so just strange to me because how did Josh Dobbs all of a sudden become like an icon of team quarterback stability or something. Like, why did it was weird that the Cardinals traded for him the way that they did. Like, why don't you acquire him earlier? How do you get to like training camp and just be like, oh, we need Josh Dobbs. I forgot to sign Josh Dobbs earlier this offseason. Now I must have him. Like, that's something that happened with the Cardinals, and now the Vikings without Kirk Cousins, they're saying like, oh, we got to get Dobbs. He's the guy you go get when your quarterback's not healthy or something. And I doubt that. I mean, he played for the Titans last year. We saw Josh Dobbs. He can't play
in important games. Yeah,
he cannot play. So if the Vikings think, they seem to think anyway, that Dobbs is going to come in and kind of give them some sort of stability, and that can only be true if you're running the wishbone. If you're running the wishbone, Josh Dobbs is a good quarterback. And I guess they could do that. They could run the wishbone and try to give 15 carries a game to both Cam Akers and Alexander Madison. But I would sooner guess that Jaren Hall would be a better quarterback for this offense because, I mean, he's probably bad, I guess. I don't know. But they took him in the 5th round. He threw a little bit at BYU. Josh Dobbs is not an NFL passer, and this is one of the most pass-happy offenses, one of the offenses most loath to run the ball, and you're putting the most run-dependent quarterback in the NFL, maybe aside from like Malik Willis, in your starting lineup. Completely insane. I can't follow any ostensible reasoning with this. It seems like a Madden franchise mode computer trade or something.
You know that Josh Dobbs, from a fantasy angle, and again, we don't know if it's gonna fit with Minnesota, but on a per game basis, actually outscoring Matthew Stafford and Geno Smith and Joe Burrow.
Yeah, he can run. That's all I can do.
Yep. I mean, I have a soft spot for him because he's been a godsend for me in a 2 quarterback league. Where I pretty much got shut out of the secondary market. So I was like, well, I guess we're going Dobbs. But beyond that, yeah, I don't have particularly high expectations. And I think you bring up a really good point that he's an odd fit for a Minnesota team that is so pass happy. I mean,
John?
So yes.
Oh, sorry. I want to make a prediction. I think that Josh Dobbs will complete. I don't think it's going to last that long. I am pretty sure they're going to have to go to Hall eventually. But I think Dobbs will complete less than 60% of his passes for 5.5 yards per attempt or less. And he should keep running, should still work, but he can't throw the ball. It's just a joke. It's ridiculous. This is a team just mashing buttons again, just doing something that they think it sounds like a good idea. Like this, trade for Josh Dobbs. Yeah, let's trade for Josh Dobbs. They're not looking at who the player actually is.
Nope. I mean, if the Raiders weren't so ridiculous, you could have traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, Ryan Tannehill. I mean, like there's so many other options than Dobbs, but I suppose the Raiders just like weren't picking up the phone on Tuesday from what I've seen on Twitter, which is awesome. Like I love that, cool. But yeah. Respect to that. I'd love to not pick up my phone, but yeah, this is an odd spot for Minnesota.
I'll take the Falcons for sure.
Yeah, I will as well. I like them in this spot. I think they set up pretty well, and I don't think there's a drop off. It might even be an improvement going from Ritter to Heineke, whereas Minnesota might be totally lost on offense this week. Do you have any like expectations for one Jaren Hall this week? Sorry, my dog is having a little hairball accident.
Oh no. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look at Hall that much in the draft process. Looking at his numbers, would assume he's merely a good college quarterback, but he had that going for him at least. He had really good numbers at BYU. Would have liked to see him complete a higher percentage of his passes, but they were throwing downfield. It wasn't all easy targets for him. So he can probably run a little bit, right? I forgot to check his.
Yes, he had a couple seasons over 300 rushing yards.
So yeah, I think I don't know. He ran a 4.64 at the pro day. So honestly, I feel like he should be better than Dobbs. If he isn't, that would really look bad. But if you throw to Jordan Addison enough times, if you if you don't throw to KJ Osborne too much, it might work out okay. The blocking should be good. There's no pass rush for the Falcons. Leading pass rusher has like 2 sacks. Or wait, Grady Jarrett's out for the year actually. So their leading sack producer is a backup linebacker.
Well, yeah, that's a tricky one. Of course, I don't know. I might throw a Jaron Hall lineup out there just to see what happens, but I'm with you. It's going to be a mess for the Vikings, and I hate what this does for their just kind of fantasy outlook the rest of the season, because Jordan Addison was coming on so strong. Hawkinson was having a good season. They were going to get Justin Jefferson back relatively soon, and now it's kind of all for naught. Let's go on over to the big crab cake. The Ravens are hosting the Seahawks. You're seeing this one at Ravens -5.5, over under at 43.5. Your expectations here?
Well, don't want to like count out the Seahawks exactly, especially because I still don't like everything that the Ravens are doing, but I like that they're settling in on Gus Edwards as their lead runner. I think that he was clearly the whole time their best lead runner, and I think when you get a power element going like that between the tackles, it is particularly good for setting up the passing game. Like it's particularly good for breaking the too high when you have a power runner, because it's those power runners that really get the safety to lean forward a little bit. And if you don't have a little bit of bulk in the third level to give reinforcement against Gus Edwards, like he can knock over linebackers pretty easily. So and he can run away once he does. So yeah, I like seeing Gus Edwards get going, but they're kind of doing a stupid, the Ravens are, in my opinion, they're kind of doing a thing with Bateman that like the Chiefs are doing with Rashee Rice, where like you got to get this guy on the field over Nelson Aguilar. Stop the Aguilar thing. Stop the Beckham thing. You need Bateman you need some vertical threat to express on the field to avoid these scenarios where they had like 5 catches for 7 yards or whatever for Zay Flowers at some point in that last game. Like Zay Flowers should not be getting used that much on screen passes where he ends up with numbers like that. And if the defense is dictating numbers like that, it's because they're selling out to stop him in that part of the field, and they're cutting loose the deep part of the field. So when you see 7 yards on 5 targets like that to Flowers, it's specifically because the defense is daring them to send someone else downfield, and they're just choosing not to do it. And the part of the problem, it's definitely Aguilar, it's definitely Beckham. And if Bateman is not the guy who gives them that, they should have gotten somebody. Like it's just going to keep getting worse. They're going to have inexplicable down games against defenses that have no business giving them trouble if they don't find a way to make the defense pay for selling out to spam Flowers underneath like that. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, I'm a little discouraged with Monken, even though the Ravens overall are of course doing fine. It's just it shouldn't be this difficult, and against a team like the Cardinals, it shouldn't have been that difficult to throw the ball. So while I see ways that they should be able to hurt the Seahawks defense, I can't really take anything for granted right now with the Ravens passing game. Like I don't have faith that they're going to make a defense pay for selling out to stop their few strengths. And if they're going to make it easier on the defense by putting Aguilar on the field instead of Bateman, they're going to pay for it. They're going to have their loss to the Broncos eventually. And maybe this one, but it's not the Broncos. Yeah.
I think, as someone who's been pretty harsh, pretty critical of Rashad Bateman, I think a corner might be being turned. I think that the last few games since the Pittsburgh debacle, he hasn't been getting a ton of volume, but he's been very efficient. I think he's at like 6 catches on 8 targets for like 86 yards, something like that. So that's good efficiency. Obviously, a small sample, but I think to your point, when it comes to the Ravens, a healthy Rashad Bateman, and I think he's starting to be closer to 100%. Certainly the most that he's been since the start of last season. He's definitely the biggest field stretcher that they have. And so I'm expecting a kind of breakout from him. I think that Nelson Aguilar was a fine enough stopgap, basically, when Bateman was not playing well. But I think Bateman is starting to turn it on a little bit and run after the catch a little bit. We saw him look pretty good last week, I thought, against the Cardinals. I thought he was fine against the Lions as well. So This week, I'm paying attention to Bateman. I feel like that a big game is coming from him. I know Beckham got shut out of the box score last week, but he also drew some penalties on those 4 catchless targets. So I don't know, maybe he'll get something going as well. And defenses won't be able to key on Flowers quite as much. And then all of a sudden, this offense actually has multiple viable weapons.
Man, I guess I really wish they had traded for somebody, or I'd like to see them play Duvernay more. Of course, like since someone downfield. My God, like John, Zay Flowers has 3 catches of 40 or more yards, and his average yards per catch is still at 10.5 this year. I cannot remember seeing anything like that before. That means he's basically either getting 1-yarders or 40+ yarders. That catch, that 10.5 yards per catch should be at least like 13.5 with that many 40-yard plays. That is not a healthy offense. They got to figure it out.
And on the Aguilar angle, I'm sure he didn't help himself with the flub on the onside kick, but over the last 2 weeks, under 4% target share individually in both of those games, while Bateman has been above that in terms of the volume. I'm not super big on Justice Hill target volume coming out of the backfield.
They gotta stop that.
That could be, I'm
that's a win for the defense. When you throw it to Hill, the defense is going, whew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but we live to fight another play. On the Seattle side of things, we saw Zach Charbonnet get a decent amount of work this past week. Maybe there's something up with Kenneth Walker. I know he's dealing with I believe a calf issue, so maybe that was part of the deal there. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba was able to score that critical and crucial at the same time touchdown to put them ahead for good and bring home the cover for the Seahawks. So that was absolutely lovely. But your thoughts on those developments out of those Seattle rookies right now?
It's all about Jake Bobo, John.
Well, yeah, I buried the lead.
Bobo show. Honestly, I don't understand how it's happening. Like he's a 25-year-old rookie who was like, what was he, like a backup tight end at Duke before he had 500-yard year for UCLA as a grad transfer? I
want to say he overlapped with Daniel Jones at one point. Like that's how long ago it was.
He's a 28-year-old rookie. Yeah. I don't understand the Bobo thing. He didn't even play real receiver in college, you know. He was they were like at the college level, they said, "You're way too slow, buddy. You got to go to tight end and be a skinny tight end." And the Seahawks were like, "We got to get this guy at receiver." So he runs like a 4.95. He's a skinny 6'4" receiver, and he's unstoppable, John. They can't do anything about him. And I don't know. It's really funny, but he has like almost as good of numbers on the year as Jackson Smith and Jigba. But to be serious, Jackson Smith and Jigba is the one who will, in the long term, be good, of course. And it's been good to see him get going over the past few weeks, but I would have liked to have seen more targets. I want to see more targets per snap for the whole year at this point. Like 36 targets on 245 snaps is not nearly good enough at a 4.6 yard average depth of target. Like that might have been okay at something like 9.5 yards a target. This is not it. So he still has ground to make up. These last 3 weeks have been somewhat encouraging, just kind of surprisingly not close to good enough. It's like he really was starting from the absolute bottom, and they're still scraping with him, even doing this, you know, they're scraping to get anywhere. So it'd be nice to see him take another step forward. And that offense just should be a lot more consistent than it's been. I don't know why they go like entire halves scoring 4 points. Like that shouldn't happen with this team.
No, it should not. Is there any sense that like maybe Geno's coming back to earth a little bit compared to last year?
Maybe, I guess. I look at his peripherals and they seem mostly the same. It's a little bit more interceptions, but I guess you might also have reason to suspect the offensive line being hurt to start the year was maybe part of the issue here. Charles Cross missed something like the first 3 games. Lucas is still out. Damian Lewis missed one a couple weeks ago. He's a good guard they have. So their offensive line has dealt with a lot of injuries that they didn't last year. And maybe that explains the fluctuation somewhat. I don't really know.
And then last comment, a bit of credit to you from your draft call several years ago. You said this Texas A&M guy looks like he might actually be pretty good. It's defensive lineman out of A&M, Justin Matabike, leads interior defensive lineman in sacks.
Pretty good. Nice, good for him. Yeah, I remember.
Yes.
John, you might recall at the time a certain intellectual tradition from out west that said, among other things, Fred Warner's no good. He isn't worth anything. Those people, I remember when the Ravens took Madubuike, they were like, this just shows that the Ravens don't get analytics. This shows that they just don't understand that you gotta make it all about the pass. And here they've drafted yet another run stopper in Justin Madubuike. So you might also remember at the time, John, we were like, he's not a run stopper. And maybe those geniuses out west have had the same realization by now.
The realizations in them, those are two parallel lines that will never
6.5 sacks. I did not notice that. I would have guessed he was at like 3.5. That's a lot for 8 games.
Yeah, he's just caving it in. And then former 7th rounder Geno Stone leads the league in interceptions.
Okay, well, that I was wrong about. I thought he for sure could not play in the NFL.
He was one of those guys that like every team has the token like, oh, he just crushes it in practice. All the players love him, and then like you see him on game day, and it's like what are they talking about? But Geno Stone has definitely been a huge fill in while Marcus Williams has basically been a dud and injured this year and all that stuff most of last year too. Anyway, we move on. Let's go Cardinals, Browns. We've got the Browns as 7.5 point favorites in this one. Cardinals, again, likely starting Clayton Tune. I have this circled as a game that could definitely have some line movement depending on Deshaun Watson's status and also Kyler Murray's status, although I'm more expecting Kyler to be back next week.
Okay, yeah. I don't know what to make of Tune because already really
that's your guy.
Right, it's my guy, and it's already discouraging to me that the Cardinals got to like the end of training camp and we're just like, let's get Josh Dobbs. Let's pay a 5th for Josh Dobbs. Let's pay an early 5th round pick for Josh Dobbs right now. And so Clayton Tune must not have looked that good in practice for that to have been the case. Like they must have had some amount of concern over him. But the basic deal with Tune is he can run. He should be able to do all the running about that Josh Dobbs did, maybe even a little more. He's probably a little denser built, but Tune is he's like an unnatural passer. He's one of those guys you can tell he like spends a lot of time working on mechanics and stuff, but you can also watch as he's trying to set up and throw. You can tell he's really like trying to remember all the steps and he's like grinding through the process and stuff. And he's worked really hard at his 5 years at Houston to get better as a passer. And you could watch earlier in his career, like he just could not throw the ball at all. And by the end, he still looked a little rough doing it, but he found ways to get better every year. So that's kind of a good thing. That was a similar trajectory as like Dak Prescott at Mississippi State. Like they were using him as a rushing specialist initially, and each year he kind of worked really, really hard to improve his throwing mechanics, and he's somewhat polished today. So Clayton Tune can get better. It's a tight window kind of thing at best because he's already old for a prospect. And it's like if he's not good enough to beat out Dobbs, either the coaches were wrong to do that or he's probably pretty awful.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think your summation on the league's view of Josh Dobbs from earlier in the show probably shines through where the Cardinals, even if it made more sense for them to just fully tank probably and start Clayton Tune from the jump. Maybe they wanted to have talk themselves into Dobbs, maybe making them somewhat respectable. And obviously that September was not bad for them, especially relative to expectations. It obviously started to fall apart completely over this last month and everything like that. But basically bottom line is it wouldn't really shock you if the Cardinals just made the wrong decision there. That's just kind of what it is. And yeah, I have some lingering interest in Tune as well. I think the fact that you like him certainly, kind of steers me in that direction. Now, will they be able to be competitive against the Browns, even if it's PJ Walker? I'm not so sure.
I'll say this: Clayton Tune has to be better than PJ Walker. However, the Browns' defense is so much better than the Cardinals' defense that, yeah, it could be a real, train wreck kind of scenario for Tune here. It might be, John, as simple as the Cardinals aren't quite sure. No, actually, it could be worse. It could be that the Cardinals are sure that Kyler Murray is fully healthy, but they were just like, well, he's gonna get killed out there. Make Tune do it.
Yeah, that was sort of my answer for people asking about Amari DiMercato last week. Like, should we start him? And it's like, well, James Conner's coming back, so you have a short window in which you can use him. And the next two games for the Cardinals are the Ravens and the Browns. I don't know if DiMercato is going to do a lot in that setup. And I think the same applies to Tune in this spot, or it would have applied to Dobbs as well. And then last item here, how about that Trey McBride fella?
Yeah, it wasn't pretty exactly, but considering how bad the circumstances were for the Cardinals offense in that game, it was inefficient or not, it was good to see McBride, 14 targets is crazy high number for a tight end, especially in 59 snaps. That's more 36 routes. So he blocked 23 of those 59 snaps. Still draws 14 targets. So that's pretty impressive. It's a little irritating, John, because I had Trey McBride on a lot of best ball teams, and I really think he could have just been doing this the whole year. Specifically, there was that first 3 weeks, Zach Ertz had something like 32 targets. It was 20 catches for 80 yards or whatever. And they're just leaving Trey McBride on the bench the whole time. And the few times he's playing, they're like, go block. Zach Ertz needs more time. And it makes the whole approach of the Arizona offense this year really puzzling, because it's like they don't seem to just be tanking, but they kind of are. But then they're kind of doing evaluation at times, but then they're also kind of, I don't know if they're trying to do example setting with we're starting Zach Ertz and Josh Dobbs because Zach Ertz is a good vet who practices the right way, and Josh Dobbs was an aerospace engineering major. And that's why you got to be like them. Okay. Maybe that's what it's all about. I don't know, but it does. I can't figure out what they're trying to do. And that makes them, really difficult to figure out. The running backs too, that you see it there, maybe even more. Like DiMercato, we're giving him 20 carries this week. We're giving Damian Williams and Keontae Ingram the carries the week before that. We're making DiMercato the passing down back 2 weeks ago, but now it's Keontae Ingram. Deontay Ingram's the passing down back, and now DiMercato's a rushing specialist. What are you trying to figure something out? It seems like you're confused and trying to figure something out, but I just can't imagine what.
It's all over the board. Let's see, they've had DiMercato over 50% of the rushes these last 2 weeks, but
Ingram was the passing down guy in the last one, which is weird because not that weird in that Ingram is a better passing down back in my opinion than DiMercato, but he's also a better runner than DiMercato, and that I cannot tell what they think they're doing at all.
Nope. Maybe that's their point. It's like they're the crazy guy. You never know what they're gonna do. Let's keep rocking. Yeah, it's certainly one way of approaching it when you're an NFL franchise. But before we get on to Rams Packers, got a message from our friends over at Splash Sports. RotoWire is proud to partner with Splash Sports for the 2023 fantasy football season. Splash Sports empowers gaming commissioners to earn by creating contests. Commissioners can set up contests, add their style, and enjoy the evolving Splash Sports platform for customized preferences. From daily to season-long contests, Splash Sports caters to various playing styles such as DFS, Pick-X, and traditional Survivor. I have bowed out in the Survivor pool on RotoWire, but I'm still in there on the
Texans
picks pool. Ooh. All right, we'll get to that.
Oh, okay. Sorry if you lost because you took the Texans.
Was that? No, they were too short of favorites against the Panthers for me to consider that one. I I didn't make it that far. I think I was out by the end of September. I think week 3 was the carnage week, and I got at that point.
I'm more of a week 1 kind of. Sorry,
just taking the I forget. Not going to land the joke. Back to the read. And unlike traditional sports books, Splash Sports pits you against friends and family, not the house. Splash goes beyond betting, a space where friends can connect, strategize, and share in the excitement of sports. RotoWire will be running weekly DFS tiers contests on Splash Sports all season. So if you're just hearing about this now, if you just know about Splash for week 9, that's great. We still have a lot of weeks to go this NFL season. Can you beat the RotoWire experts? You can probably beat me. Visit rotowire.com/splash to enter today. That's fun to say, /splash. I can't believe I didn't completely mess that one up.
I can't believe I didn't interrupt you. Oh, there we go.
No, it's good. It's a little back and forth on the read. I think it adds a little juice to it. Some of our favorite podcasts, Mario, they like to do that with their reads. Let's get on to this Rams-Packers game. Been teasing it for like 2 minutes now. What do you say about either of these teams at this stage? I mean, I had some real faith that the Rams were in a decent setup last week to at least cover against the Cowboys.
Yeah,
they got rinsed. They got blown out of the water. Stafford just had the tough looking. That's like one of my least favorite, like really serious injuries to watch is when a quarterback throws and the follow through the thumb hits the helmet like that. I can't even imagine how much that hurts. So dealing with that. And then on the Packers side, they're just in shambles.
Yeah, I thought the Rams had a good chance to beat Dallas, so that was stupid. But also a confusing team to me. I don't understand why the Rams have done some of the things they have this year and then have a game like that, especially when Dallas has a game like they did against the 49ers. I mean, with Dallas, you saw such a reliable trend of just they beat teams that are kind of like helpless at quarterback or helpless in general, and then they get destroyed by teams that are competently coached, basically. And I thought McVay, as much as I have a lot of issues with how he handles his personnel, I thought, him and Raheem Morris were clearly doing a good job. I thought they must have been, because I thought they had exceeded kind of what I would have projected for the talent of their personnel that they're using. But against Dallas, it's like it wasn't just the offense sucked for the Rams, like the defense, fell apart completely in a way that I would have expected them to in the first few weeks. Going into the year, I was looking at like, what, Darian Kendrick or Keller Witherspoon? They can't cover anybody. And yet they went about a month and a half with pretty good pass defense numbers. And so I thought, like, okay, I guess I just am wrong about, how these corners fit into the scheme. Apparently, if they found some Moneyball thing to do at corner, apparently I have to just, accept that going forward, they're going to win some matchups they shouldn't. And yet in this game, this was exactly what it should have looked like. CeeDee Lamb against Darian Kendrick. That's a total just laugher of a matchup. And for some reason, I guess whatever credit I have to give to Mike McCarthy, this was probably the first game all year where the Dallas talent on offense just showed up the way on paper it ever should have. Like all those other games, it's just you could say CeeDee Lamb's got the advantage over this guy, but you get the game going and it's just everything's a grind. They're like struggling to get him the ball. And Brandon Cooks especially, like he's better than all these corners that he's facing all year. Doesn't even get like 2 targets game hardly. So going against the Rams, it was like, well, these Dallas receivers can kill these guys, but they hadn't done it up until that point. So I just I don't know what changed, if it was just the Rams falling or Dallas getting better. But the Rams personnel in the secondary is still just the worst in the league, pretty much, aside from maybe like the Cardinals, somebody like that. So if they keep, if this is the start of a regression in their defensive returns, that would make sense, and it would make sense for it to continue just kind of indefinitely. So while Jordan Love is incredibly bad and basically needs to go to the bench. Sorry, trying to fight off a sneeze right now. Those receivers might be pretty much wide open. It's just that was the case against the Vikings too. And Jordan Love, I don't know if he's even processing his reads anymore. He just seems to drop back and just stare, and something bad eventually happens, and then the play ends, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you punt. and that's what the Packers offense is right now. So it's at once what is it? John Wolford's he said no thanks. I'm staying in Tampa Bay, right? When the Rams tried to do the Darrell Henderson with him. What a weird way of running a team that the Rams are going about. So is Stafford not out? Okay, I guess so. He's questionable. I don't know. Doesn't that seem like a tough one to play through?
Yeah, I mean it absolutely does. I mean your thumb is busted on your throwing hand. You
it's probably
need your thumb to grip the ball.
We're thinking ripping.
Yeah, I think it is ripping. Let me verify this. Let me see if my.
He's the next guy on the depth chart for sure. I saw a thing like they tried to get John Wolford to come back to the team from the Tampa Bay practice squad, and he said no thanks. I'd rather stay here. So they're concerned enough to call Wolford. Rippin's the next guy, unless they can. Is Stetson Bennett still just lost in the woods or something? Or did they find him yet?
He is. No, they have not found him. According to a report from earlier this week, in fact, it is less likely that Bennett will return to the team this season. So
they've really lost the scent then. Well, unless the guy they sent out to wrangle him back gets an unexpected break, it's going to be probably Brett Rippin. And Brett Rippin, oh man, this is such a bleak thing to have to wonder. Is Brett Rippin better than Jordan Love? Because he might be. And if the Rams have the better quarterback in this game, I kind of want to pick them despite their various issues, because I really do wonder if, in addition to just being not that good in the first place, Jordan Love has the yips or something now, because he just goes like catatonic back there. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's like Ned Gerblansky when he sees the southern tree frog of southern Sri Lanka.
The Mexican staring frog of southern Sri Lanka.
Folks, if you don't know what we're talking about, Google that. It's one of my all-time favorite South Park scenes. Interestingly enough, I'm looking at the pick data over on Yahoo. 70% of the picks are on the Rams to cover 3 this week.
Yeah, man, it's one of those things where you're missing something, but it's just impossible to figure out what it is, because I don't know. I for what it's worth, Rippin is really bad too. So maybe it's just one of those things where like the team that just throws the ball less wins, and we can't know which one that'll be.
Nope. There's a reason why the over-under is set at 39.5, and I like the under. Let's go Bucs Texans. We got the Texans as 2.5 point favorites at home. They're coming off a kind of head scratching loss to the Panthers, but I didn't think the Texans played very, like, I didn't think they deserved to win that game necessarily. And then the Bucs, as all great teams do, they covered against the Bills, but not the best showing from them. It took a lot of what I suspect to be just some refs trying to keep the game interesting late on that Thursday night, because they were pretty much out of that. I thought that the Bills had kind of put them out of their misery with the Dalton Kincaid touchdown, but the Bucs were able to battle back. Sick Hail Mary attempt from Baker Mayfield, but it didn't land. There we have it. But Texans back at home now, slight favorites inside the key number of 3. What are we looking at here?
Well, the Texans' loss to the Panthers was pretty concerning. On the one hand, I would chalk it up to somewhat just a chance. Even teams that are way better than another team probably only beat that team something like 7 or 8 times out of 10. They don't beat them every time. Maybe the Texans were on their 3 out of 7 loss beat in that game. I don't know, but CJ Stroud did not push the ball downfield at all, and I wonder, as much as I thought that was an easy matchup, and it certainly was from the personnel standpoint. I mean, like, Jeremy Chin out, JC Horn out, Brian Burns was not healthy and still had like an effect on the game. That defense was completely overmatched by the Houston pass catching personnel, and yet Stroud didn't get anything going. So I wonder if Aviro Giro was, and you saw them also running the ball a lot, right? You saw them running more than they usually do, despite not having a lead really the whole game and not getting a whole lot from the run game when they did run. So to me, that looks like the Texans were kind of being baited by the defensive calls into calling run plays, spamming the pass basically. And they responded by running more and not running any better for it. And then the passing game got worse, and then just nothing took the place of it. So they need to get the receivers going again. It's really disappointing that Collins and Stroud couldn't get more. Collins and Dell couldn't get more going in that game. The Buccaneers defense, I think, can be tough. It's maybe the slot with Dell that's the easiest. I mean, I know we saw what was it? Carlton Davis just had a pretty good game against like Stephon Diggs. I know the rest of those guys got beat quite a bit, but if Carlton Davis can kind of make things tough on Nico Collins, then I'm a little worried again for the passing game of the Texans here, because it pretty much all falls on Dell. Whenever Dalton Schultz is getting usage, I think it's like the offense is losing. It's like Dalton Schultz is the guy you throw to when you're making a futile attempt to catch up late in a game or kick a field goal at halftime to be down 11 points going into half. Like, that's when Dalton Schultz starts getting the ball, and they can't run on this defense. They apparently can't run on anybody. So yeah, I'm a little worried for the Texans in this spot. I think they're going somewhere as a team. And I feel like their defense is still a little bit dangerous just because of the edge rushers, but they have no pop on offense right now if you just kind of spam deep a little bit. And I don't know that they have any way to – what they should start doing is get Xavier Hutchinson in offense, in my opinion. But if you're going to put Noah Brown out there, it's like, guess what? You're punting.
Yeah, I'd love to see the X-Man out there as well. With Robert Woods being dinged up, I'm open to the possibility of Hutchinson maybe getting involved this week. That's an interesting point on how to defend the Texans, and how that aligns with the Bucs, because if you take away the pass, the run support for the Bucs is good enough. Just kind of straight up, even if they're not like completely set up personnel wise to defend the run, that they can still flow and find the running back. And they haven't been able to run the ball at all. And we're starting to see Singletary basically be the 1B to Dameon Pierce's 1A. And I'm not even sure that Pierce hangs on to that 1A distinction for too much longer the way that he's playing.
Well, Singletary didn't do anything either. So I think it's pretty clearly the structure of the offense, the blocking isn't good enough. The scheme isn't setting it up. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little something to having Dell and Schultz on the field at the same time. Makes it pretty much impossible to run the ball because you're just so small and weak at the point of attack that you just can't really do anything. If your 5 linemen are not killing the defensive front, you're getting leaks from the edges all the time. So it's like you can't even run any off tackle kind of plays in this offense, which, if you restrict your viable runs to only between the guards, eventually defenses will figure that out and make those runs between the guards worthless too. So
yep.
I think they need to switch something up, and I don't know that they have, particularly if they keep rolling out Noah Brown and Dalton Schultz. Like, you're going to keep getting folded up.
Where's John Mechie?
It seems like he's still struggling to come back from leukemia, basically. Like he seems like he's dealing with like fatigue and stuff and can't take on the full workload of practice or games.
That's brutal. I do not love to hear that. Wish him the best, of course. Before we move on over to the next game, a couple of interesting questions here to knock out quickly. Can't believe we're at this stage, Mario, where this is a legitimate question. Would you trade Devontae Adams for Puka Nacua?
If Stafford were fully healthy, I'd say yes, but it's a little tougher with the Stafford issue. Man, I know the offer is, especially if you have like a deadline now, it's tough.
It's coming up.
I would rather wait a week if I could, but if Stafford's healthy, I definitely would rather have Nacua than I would Adams with O'Connell and Hoyer. But I don't know. For some reason I'm feeling like it's too risky for me to say yes.
I'll say it. Give me the Puka side of it. Oh gosh, I can't believe that. That's so insane. But such is the Raiders at this
We live
stage.
in a meritocracy, so yeah.
Don't we? And then JAC wants to know, would you trade Hollywood and Njoku for Garrett Wilson? He already has Laporta, and McBride, so he's pretty well set at tight end to kind of cover the loss there.
Yeah,
Um,
not concerned about the tight end part, but yeah, I don't know. John, do you have Hollywood ahead of Wilson straight up, basically? Because that's what it is for me. It's like, which one do I have ahead straight up? And I think I
it's
would prefer
that's
Wilson.
that's tricky, yeah, because Wilson obviously is going to have the worst quarterback play that the rest of the way we expect. Once Kyler Murray comes back, that certainly helps Hollywood, but Wilson's been, he hasn't been returning value on his draft slot, but he's still been grinding it out. Like he's not giving you duds. He's
Right.
finding ways. So I would take the Garrett Wilson side of that. I would make that trade if I'm Jack, and then. If you had to drop one of these three quarterbacks, Kyler, Justin Fields, or Dak, I think it's probably Fields.
How long is he out even? I forgot to follow up on that.
He's out again this week, so we're 3 weeks into the Tyson Bagent era.
Calling him week to week, which to me sounds like at least another 2 weeks. But we also don't know when Kyler Murray will be back. I think if you, I don't know, man. Is this like a super flex? This can't be super flex, or else he's whatever. I would say cut Kyler, honestly, because this must be like a smallish league, or at least not a quarterback intensive demand league when you have both Dak and Fields and
right.
Murray. So maybe you can just at worst pick up Murray in a week if you really need to or something. But unless you need a backup to Dak in the next 2 weeks, I would rather have Fields than Murray.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah, Murray, the comparably bad team setups, but you do feel like Fields probably has a little bit more of like a week-to-week floor with the rushing. So I understand that. I guess there's also like the emotional weight of you've been probably stashing Kyler for a while. You're ready for him to get back, but it could be slow going for him initially. Let's see here, and then who you got rest of the season? Jahmyr Gibbs or Breece Hall?
Well, Breece Hall, I'm pretty sure. I just because I'm expecting Montgomery to pretty much not be what he was before his injury, but I don't know, like 80%, 85% of what Jamal Williams' usage was, So I don't see Gibbs being like a 20 carry back. Breece Hall doesn't always get there himself, of course, but when he doesn't, it's because the Jets were so bad that they weren't getting first downs enough to give him enough carries to get to that count. So I prefer Breece. Love both players, but I prefer Breece, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's we're talking about two probably top 15, maybe top 12 running backs rest of the season. Gibbs looked so impressive on Monday night. I thought
he's really good.
He's really so maybe this is the way in which Dan Campbell has to learn his lesson, is to just see what it looks like when he turns Gibbs loose and he doesn't have the option to screw it up with David Montgomery. No shade to Dave Montgomery. He's been very useful in fantasy when he's been active this year, but Gibbs definitely gives so much more dynamism to that offense just generally. Let's keep going here. And I go Breece by a nose over Gibbs just because of the competition concerns in that Detroit backfield. Boy, I don't want to spend a ton of time here. We got Commanders, Patriots. Commanders 3.5-point dogs on the road.
Yeah, I'm really mad that Josh McDaniels got fired before Ron Rivera, because I feel like this is more of a rollout right here. Trading both Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Ron, it has to be Ron next. Why couldn't it have been Ron before Josh McDaniels? I don't know. It seems to me like they pretty clearly need to give Bieniemy a shot, or maybe they're already committed to just going through the year and then promoting Bieniemy in the offseason. I don't know. That would make enough sense, I guess, to be fair to them. But they're tanking now. It's very clearly tanking, and in a really belligerent way too. It's like I feel like you're tanking not only this year, you're tanking next year too already by trading away Montez Sweat, because like that's a player they should want to have, even in an extended contract. You should want players like that if you are rebuilding. It's like you don't want players like Sweat when you're not building at all. So they're not even doing the rebuilding part; they're just tearing it down. So that defense can probably get really bad. I know it's already been kind of bad, but like they have
Yeah,
no
someone
pass rush
someone
at
was
all.
making the point. Someone was making the point that like that as it stood before yesterday, Washington was already like fourth in the league in passing yards allowed, and they've given up 18 passing touchdowns, which is the worst in the league. And that's while they still had good edge personnel. Now that's gone. That's going to get crazy bad potentially. Washington might be in awesome shootouts like the rest of the season. So this could actually work out well for fantasy.
Yeah, and I guess I should have maybe headlined with Howell. I don't understand him at all at this point. I don't understand how he has a game like. I mean, maybe he got better. Maybe he is in the process of an ongoing process of getting better. Getting better. But yeah, 397 and 4 touchdowns against the Eagles is just so wacky.
And he was
I
good
don't
against them earlier this year too.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about them specifically, or if it's again maybe it's he's just getting better in the process of getting better. But man, by this point, I guess he's at worst in that kind of Bortles category where maybe he turns out to be bad, but you also have to take seriously the chances that he has big games. For completely unpredictable reasons, I guess, but still, it's something we got to understand is out there. I don't know if I think he's good enough though, and Bortles factor still makes room for this kind of outcome too. Still feel like Howell's going to come back to earth for this game, going to Foxborough. Just in general, it almost probably wouldn't have mattered where he played or against who. He probably wasn't going to have as good of a showing as he did against the Eagles. Probably won't have a showing that good again all year. So some regression has to happen. I guess the question is like, of course, are the Patriots even worse yet or something on the other side? And I don't think they are. I think, especially now that Washington doesn't have Sweat or Young, the Patriots should be able to move the ball on this defense, especially in Foxborough, or at least if they can't do that, they should get short enough fields that they get some points. And I don't know. I figure the Patriots will win this.
I'm liking the Patriots here as well. What are the where do you target it as far as like? I think it's more of like probably a DFS consideration for this weekend if you want to be a little bit more contrarian and just like target the Washington offense. But Kendrick Bourne being done for this season and Devontae Parker being in the concussion protocol earlier this week. Does this up the appeal of the Demario Douglas? Are we going to see Kayshon Boutte rise from the dead? I mean, what do they have as far as viable replacements? None.
I mean, it's just those two guys and Tyquan Thornton, really. So I guess Rager, but sorry, I'm sneezing again. They should. I think the Patriots should be fine in this game, just mostly on the basis of their run game. And those receivers, it's a bad situation. I mean, Demario Douglas has already done a good job. I think he's pretty clearly a decent player. I think actually that I believed going into the draft and still believe now that Douglas and like Tank Dell are a lot closer together than people give Douglas credit for. But he is just a slot and underneath oriented receiver. Although Douglas is fast, even though he's explosive, I don't think he has really like the vertical acumen. It's not the kind of speed that makes a safety turn and run downfield because they kind of just keep backpedaling the whole time kind of thing. And I'd like to see them start setting Thornton just downfield as a decoy, if nothing else. I mean, he's fast enough. Just have him run at safeties, make him run directly at a safety and just make the safety have to either make the decision to fall forward and let him go or turn and run, and that safety's out of the picture right there. Just do that every play with Thornton. And that's a start, honestly, from where they're beginning. It's a really bad situation. It's also pretty impressive how they've managed to make Gesicki about as useless as the Dolphins did. Really terrible GMing over there. But Washington, they're literally trying to lose. How bad can the Patriots be, right?
Yeah, I do like the Patriots in this spot. I can't predict exactly how they're going to get it done, but I do believe that they will. Then one more for the 1 o'clock window before we get on to the afternoon and the prime times. We got Bears Saints. We got the Saints 7.5 point favorites again. Tyson Bagent expected to start for the Bears here. Saints coming off a nice offensive game up in Indianapolis. They return home. Kamara's looking pretty good. And Rashid Shaheed is a big play waiting to happen. But do you have any other kind of thoughts on this Saints offense as it goes into, what should be a really soft matchup for them?
Yeah, Derek Carr did a better job last week, of course, but it was also a pretty favorable setup. So uh, who knows what to make of him going forward. The Bears, of course, they have Jalen Johnson, who's a good corner, but the other corners are not good, and somebody's going to be open pretty much every play. So, yeah, Saints should roll. I actually feel pretty comfortable taking them to cover this one. I bet, I don't know, I could see the Saints winning by like 14 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that they roll here as well. And then fully endorse it. More Taysom Hill. More Taysom. Let's do it.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know what it is, but that guy, he's just a football player. Said it last week. Sorry, we just wrapped that game. I did want to ask one more thing on the Commanders side of that Commanders Patriots game.
Oh, whoops.
What did you think of Jahan Dotson's reemergence last week?
Well, that's who he is. He's not the player that was before last week, but on the other hand, it did take Howell having probably what will be the best game of his career for Dotson to get that space carved out. So on the one hand, I do think it's easy enough for an offense to get the usage that had been going to Curtis Samuel and get it going to Dotson. And I definitely think Dotson's a good enough player. But unless some sort of like corner was turned with Howell specifically, I don't know what the enduring change here will be, because like I don't think it was Dotson the whole time. Like he was doing whatever he could the whole time. What changed was what everyone else was doing, or at least the quarterback. And especially against I don't know, against tougher opponents or whenever the falling back down to earth happens, I think Dotson might be the first one to get the penalty before McLaurin, So I worry about it, especially this year fluctuating, but in Dynasty or something, if anyone ever got low on Dotson, I'd hammer that. I'd buy in bulk.
Yeah, I have a lot of Dotson. I was a big believer coming into this year. I thought that what he did as a rookie was way under, appreciated. Although, we did see things get a little bit haywire in the best ball markets towards the start of the season in light of the McLaurin turf toe, which proved to be a non-issue. But I think Dotson showed that he needs to be more involved going forward. So I loved to see that. I held on in standard redraft leagues, but I definitely saw a lot of Dotson on waiver wires a week ago, and I think he's pretty much been picked up everywhere as of Wednesday as a result of what he did against the Eagles. Let's go Colts Panthers, 4 o'clock game for reasons unbeknownst to me, but Panthers are 3-point dogs at home. What's going on here?
Well, I think the Panthers beat the Texans pretty much because of Viro Ajiro doing a great job as a defensive coordinator. And Bryce Young is doing better, of course, than he had been. I'm just not all that convinced by it. And I also am not convinced by just the usage of the players and the Panthers offense is weird to me. It's like Adam Thielen's rolling. That's great. But I'm not a fan of the Mingo offense, and I don't understand what they're doing with their backfield exactly. I guess it was good to see, Raheem Blackshear get a shot, but Miles Sanders is apparently just benched now. And
boy, that's a bad contract. My goodness.
Yeah, and I just don't understand why they would make that decision so quickly when they were so committed to him to start the year. It's just it's one of those things like why'd you have to sell the lie in the first place? And in this case, the lie is not that they, intended to use Sanders. They did intend to use him, but they lied to themselves and everybody else about how good he was. Like they're just saying like, "Oh yeah, we're just gonna give him 60 targets. Yeah, we'll do that because they're saying it. It's like they're saying it out loud. Just that sounds like a good thing to do. Yeah, let's do it. It's like, well, you can't. So what happens when it doesn't go? Are you just gonna? Is it to hell with all of it then? And the answer in this case is yeah. They're just like, oh well, just throw it all away. We had all that PR rollout about him or whatever, but let's just throw it all away. We didn't mean it anyway. So I guess they're just done with him. And I understand why. I mean, Chuba Hubbard has been more effective this year, but he didn't do anything good in this last game. So don't know what to make of their backfield. I feel like they're kind of just they're just like flailing. Aside from defense, where I do think Ajiro is going to make them keep getting better, and he's a really good coach, so he'll probably just kind of get a good showing whatever he does. But this Panthers offense, I don't trust at all, aside from Thielen. And actually, it's probably toughest to go down the seam in the slot of this Colts defense. It's those boundary corners who are really weak. And while I think Chark and Mingo can get open over there, I don't trust Young to make those throws yet. So I guess I could be just giving not enough credit to Bryce Young, but I feel like the Colts have this one.
Okay, and then as far as Indianapolis is concerned, Jonathan Taylor runs well this past week. Josh Downs remains someone that you can be starting in pretty much every format at this stage. But your thoughts on their particular setups going into this one?
Yeah, it should be a big game for Taylor. I think he's, this is a good spot for him to get both receiving and pass catching numbers here. Where, last week, I think you saw Ajiro Viro have the Panthers play off, kind of encourage the Texans to run. If they try that against the Colts, it just blows up in their face for obvious reasons. So they can't really do that. It's going to be easier, I think, for Minshew to strike than Stroud in a way. And Pittman should be good. Downs I like a lot, of course, but I wish he was getting more targets because he's never going to be, not sustainably anyway, like a big play receiver. So he's doing really well because of efficiency reasons, but it's kind of tough to just keep catching, more than 2/3 of your targets at 8.4 yards a target. Usually, at least at 7.5 yards average depth of target, it's hard to do that. Like you got to start drawing more targets at that depth, or start drawing the same number of targets at a higher depth. But yeah, I do like Downs. I just mean, I think he might be a little bit too hot the past month. Like he's almost due for a little bad luck.
Yeah, it's been a godsend for among waiver wire wide receiver pickups from earlier this year. Let's get on to. Oh boy, sorry folks. Trigger warning here. We got the Raiders and the Giants going at it.
Yeah, it's one of those games that makes you feel like the universe hates you and made this happen specifically to make you feel bad. Aiden O'Connell versus, is it Daniel Jones again? What are we doing? It's
working to verify.
Tommy DeVito.
Tommy
DeVito, by the way, that I understand why everyone was shocked by the number, like -1 yards, but if you knew who Tommy DeVito was, you probably weren't that shocked by it. You're probably like, yeah, that's exactly what I was expecting.
Yes.
He's a really, really bad ACC quarterback. So yeah, I feel comfortable saying Tommy DeVito cannot play in the NFL, not even as a backup. But in any case, it's a brutal mess on both sides. Just I still think Dable's a good coach. I can say that. But aside from Dable, just like both sides, front office and coaching on the side of the Raiders, total mess. It's like we got interim Scott Turner now. So Raiders need to go sign JD McKissick, I think. And then they can really unleash the offense. I don't even know. I guess the Giants, because they have Saquon and Dable. I don't know. I don't really care.
And I think also one of my big takeaways from Monday night was I felt bad for Jimmy G because the offensive line play was so abysmal. And I think the Giants have been playing pretty well defensively over these last few weeks after a rocky start to the season. So I think that pass rush, keyed by Kayvon Thibodeau, could just have the Raiders in hell. We saw it earlier this year when O'Connell started against the Chargers, and I think Khalil Mack had 6 sacks in that game. So we could be looking at a similar setup here, I think, for O'Connell going up against this Giants defense. And therefore, I think the Giants just win ugly, very akin to last year. And Daniel Jones, no limitations at practice. So nice. I think that they are the pick in this spot. Let's go Cowboys, Eagles. Eagles 3-point favorites in this one. Cowboys kind of get a second chance at getting a marquee victory after kind of falling flat, obviously, against the Niners a few weeks back.
Yeah, I don't know how they have that 49ers game and then have the game that they did against the Rams. But again, I got to give some whatever credit I have to give to Mike McCarthy, because Dallas's talent showed up on the field in that game. And the whole issue all year had been the Dallas offense is not showing up. Their talent is not showing up. CeeDee Lamb is not showing up the way he should. Brandon Cooks, of course, Tony Pollard. These guys are getting returns way lower than what makes sense. And the gap between the reality and the expectation can only be explained by basically administrative failure. So particularly given his lengthy history of doing weird things and getting bad results, it was difficult for me to give any benefit of the doubt to McCarthy. But against the Rams, it was just a total washing. And on offense, it should have been, and CeeDee Lamb should have torched those corners. Brandon Cooks should have beat those corners. It was supposed to be that bloodbath that it was when the Dallas offense went against the Rams defense. But because it's the first time and the only time all year that's been the case, I don't know if it's I can't take seriously at this point in time, John, that Mike McCarthy has had an epiphany that will last. No. I have to just see it as kind of like the circumstances were weird. Sean McVay just had one of his worst days in a long time, something like that. And so I'm always worried about Dallas disappointing, and I'm always worried about Dallas getting returns on offense less than what the talent of those players would dictate. But if they're going to keep it rolling, if they're going to play like they did last week, if CeeDee Lamb is going to get the chance to be who he is, Brandon Cooks, etc., Dallas is dangerous to the Eagles if all of that is true. I have trouble guessing whether it all is true, though. So, granted, I have my own gripes with how the Eagles are managing their team this year. I know for a fact they would have a lot more yardage than they do if they changed the way that they use their running backs. And it's why I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl this year. But if the Eagles start giving Rashad Penny the ball instead of Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell, and keep DeAndre Swift on the field instead of those two, then I think they roll pretty much everybody, including the Cowboys. But if the Eagles are going to sort of tempt fate and wish these third and longs, these missed conversion attempts, these gaps that a good running back would turn into a long play, maybe even a touchdown, taking that opportunity and making it a 5-yard carry with Gainwell instead, that's just tempting bad luck to find you. You're making the game closer than it needs to be. You're being cute. You're being arrogant, and bad luck comes for everybody. So you don't want to be cute and arrogant when your bad luck comes for you. And, if Dallas is a no-show on offense, the Eagles got nothing to worry about. They can keep screwing around, wasting time, deliberately being a worse team than they should be. But if Dallas shows up, they're going to wish they had all the yardage they could have had. So it's an ongoing thing. I don't know why it would change. Kenneth Gainwell is been incredibly bad, a real obvious drain on the Eagles offense. But he was obviously a drain relative to Rashad Penny and Swift going into this year. And that just doesn't matter to the Eagles coaches. So A.J. Brown is Superman. The defense is quite good on its own, of course. But if Dallas has CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks firing, then the Eagles better stop playing cute, in my opinion.
Yes. And A.J. Brown, you don't really expect the Superman act to go away anytime soon. I think he's, in the midst of a special season, but they definitely need to get some better return. I've started to, we follow a lot of Philly people on Twitter. I think there's just a lot of Philly people on Twitter, but even they are, kind of turning on their folk hero, one Kenneth Gainwell. So maybe we'll start to see a better backfield game plan going forward. Although that is not influenced by Twitter, of course. Need to stipulate that, but I got the Eagles here. I think that the Cowboys can go into the tank at any moment. Their A game is about as good as anyone's, but the odds of them playing that A game, especially against the Eagles, I'm dubious of that. So I'll take Philly in this spot. Yeah. Let's go Bills Bengals Sunday nighter. Very much looking forward to this game of the week. Probably maybe Chiefs Dolphins if you're awake for it. But Bills Bengals. I mean, the Bengals very impressive last week. Have looked good basically since they kind of turned the corner against Arizona and then got the win over the Seahawks the following week. Then had the bye. Looked healthier last week. Joe Burrow looked incredible, extremely efficient. And then, Mixon even looked okay. And then Jamar Chase doing Jamar Chase things. Higgins got a little bit more involved, so maybe he's closer to 100% as well. And I continue to be dubious of the Bills. I think, like you say, they're so Stephon Diggs dependent that the second that kind of goes away or comes under that 120 number that seems to be so key in their wins versus their losses, things get away from them. And they couldn't fully put the Bucs away last week. They had the ugly game against the Giants. They lost to the Patriots, lost to the Jaguars. That's not a terrible loss, of course, but I don't know. I don't trust Buffalo in this spot, and I think the Bengals are kind of about to put everyone on notice in a pretty significant way.
Yeah, that could be the case. I mean, Joe Burrow clearly was against the 49ers in the best shape that he was all year. And I think, particularly in hindsight, we can say the calf was clearly the only issue. So if Burrow's himself, then this is, in a lot of ways, like it's rerunning the last time these teams faced off, except the Bills just look worse this time. And the Bengals, if Burrow is healthy, should be better, actually, even though they've had a rough stretch this year. It was all because of the calf, and the Bengals have made some advances on defense since the last time these teams have faced, whereas the Bills have gotten worse on defense, due to injury mostly, but it's the reality all the same. So, these Bills corners, they don't have a whole lot left, and these receivers are way too much. The Bills are going to have to run some kind of scheme with zones, disguising the zones as much as they can. Maybe they can surprise Burrow for like a quarter or a half or something, but I think eventually the Bengals can counter adjust their way to getting the upper hand in this game. And from their offensive point of view, stopping the Bills offense from the Bengals defensive point of view is, I think, a little tougher, but there are reasons to worry about Josh Allen and the Bills. You already hinted at them. It's like, if you keep Diggs under 120, they're already in trouble most weeks. Last week was actually the first time ever I can remember that wasn't the case, because Khalil Shakir got going and Kincaid got going a little bit. They started using Gabe Davis, John, on shorter depths of target, which like all the last 2 years that play has been open. And this last game was the first time they started getting Gabe Davis targets underneath. 12 targets on 67 snaps. Even after all that, his average depth of target is still at the 74th percentile this year. So Tampa Bay, I think, was caught off guard by that. The Bengals are not going to be. They're going to know now. Well, don't just assume Davis is going deep. Make sure you be ready for that. So there's going to be an adjustment there. But if the Bills keep Shakir on the field, and I guess they'll have to because Knox is on IR, then I really think just switching from the 2 tight end offense and getting Khalil Shakir on the field instead of Kincaid at the same rep, moving Kincaid to the rep that used to be Knox, I think that is so much better of an offense. Not even like that it's ideal or anything. It's far from it, but at least Shakir makes the defense respond with someone who's either they can stay in base or whatever, and Shakir's got a disadvantage. He's got a mismatch there at the defense's disadvantage. Or at you're turning what is a useless run rep with Kincaid into a somewhat useful route with Shakir, and you're turning the Knox rep into a better route because Kincaid's a better route runner. So the passing game should be good. The running game, I don't see a whole lot for the Bills in this game or going forward. But if they can keep Shakir and Davis going, I think they should be fine. It's just that's easier said than done because this Bengals defense is totally good, and I think Lou Anarumo, he's probably got a good idea of what it takes to beat the Bills, and I bet he's thinking too, like, we got to keep Diggs under 100 and basically dare them to get the same game out of Gabe Davis as last week without cutting him loose underneath. Like it's just gonna be like a more of a grind of the same scenario, I guess.
Very much looking forward to this one. I think that's it's a very good kind of preview on that one. So yeah, we know what the Bills need to do. We know how the Bengals need to defend it.
I'll take Bengals.
I'm on the Bengals here. I'm on them strong, which is usually a terrible sign. Let's finish up. Chargers Jets. Kind of a weird matchup. I don't know. We got the Chargers 3-point favorites in this spot. The Chargers, they took care of business against the Bears, but I don't really give them a ton of credit for that. I certainly don't double count it. I think the Jets defense is so much tougher that they are at home. Obviously, the offense is what the offense is at this stage when it comes to the Jets. I mean, if the Chargers are able to play in the rhythm that they were able to a week ago, then I think I give them a shot. I'm dubious that they find that rhythm. So I like the Jets in this spot. Did you have any thoughts on Quentin Johnston getting a little bit more involved this past week? It felt like Chris Collinsworth was about to go streaking or something. He was so excited that Johnston was getting 2 targets in a row.
Well, Johnston did a good job in the game, and I think it's pretty obvious that he could have been doing something like that all year. It's just Brandon Staley is a bad coach, and he doesn't know how to evaluate talent. And when he goes setting the depth chart, he observes things in practice that don't matter for games. He seems like one of those coaches who's like, you got to run the technique of my rep the exact right way, or else you're not going to play in the game. And then in the game, they play a guy who ran the rep the exact right way in practice, but he doesn't have talent, so it doesn't matter. And then they don't get the good rep in the game. And it's like, even if Johnson's not giving you the right rep in practice, he's the one with the game day talent. So you either find a way to get him going or you prepare to lose. And Staley has taken the latter one. So I think Johnston clearly, at worst with Johnston, it takes a slight tweaking to the schemes they want to run to get him in the best position where he's at his best. And if Staley is loath to make any kind of adjustment like that, then that's a him problem. And unfortunately for Johnston's investors, it's a him problem that's going to persist. Josh Palmer is going to get over his knee thing eventually. And as soon as he does, not just this year, but any year in the future that Staley's in charge of this team, Palmer probably would run ahead of Johnston, because there's no reason for it to ever change if it's not going to change now. It's just, it's been sitting there this whole time. So Johnston's not the problem, in my opinion. He was probably the wrong pick. Jordan Addison's clearly better. I think Smith and Jigba went ahead of him, right? So I guess I can't say that.
He was the first one, yeah.
Yeah, so they should have took Addison, but that's not the same as Johnston being the worst player in the league, which is what you'd have to believe he is to think that he doesn't deserve more snaps than what he's gotten. They were rotating him out for Keelan Doss a couple of weeks ago. Give me a break. That's not based on outcome. That's just based on something petty, something insignificant. But I am worried about the Chargers here because to me, it's as simple as either Keenan Allen has a monster game or they lose. And Keenan Allen has it in him, but if he doesn't do it, they have nothing else.
So potentially long week for Eckler.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Eckler is great, but I guess I don't have a sense off the top of my head if the Jets have been good at stopping receiving backs, but I don't like Eckler as a ground back against them. Not his fault. I just think the Jets' run defense is really tough, and I don't think the Chargers are that good at running the ball. It's tough for me to read the 60 targets, 45 catches. It seems like they're kind of average as a pass catching defense against running backs. I love Eckler. I just even if he has a good game, I think the Chargers still need Allen to have a big. I'm thinking 120 yards, something like that. Either 3 touchdowns or 120 yards or more from Allen. Because I don't think anything else, even if Eckler has 80 yards receiving, it's still not enough because they're not going to run for 50, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're not going to win that way. So it's definitely going to have to be the Herbert Allen connection going. And then when Allen's covered, you pick up the first down with Eckler. But beyond that, I don't know. This could be a tough one for the Chargers. I do like the Jets at home in this spot, especially as 3-point underdogs. Definitely in that spot. Mario, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Week 9 preview. Big thanks to our sponsors over at Blue Wire, over at Circa, and over at Splash. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.